Roman consul marched 30,000 men into a wall of fog beside a lake, certain he was chasing a beaten enemy. And by the time the fog lifted, almost none of them would still be alive. It remains to this day the largest ambush in the history of warfare. June 21st, 217 BCE, the northern shore of Lake Trasimene, central Italy. Leading the Roman army, Gaius Flaminius, consul of Rome, marching fast along a narrow strip of road between steep hills and open water. Certain the Carthaginian army ahead of him is retreating in disorder. Waiting for him, hidden along every ridge above that road, invisible in the mist rolling off the lake, Hannibal Barca's entire army, roughly 25,000 men, positioned days in advance and waiting in complete silence. Flaminius commands close to 30,000 Romans. He believes he holds every advantage. He is wrong about all of it: the terrain, the danger, and the man he thinks he's chasing. By every rule of ancient warfare, an army marching in column along an open road should be able to see a threat coming from miles away. Now watch what happens. Within 3 hours, this Roman army will not exist as a fighting force. Not scattered, not retreated. Gone, trapped between a lake and a wall of hillside with nowhere left to run, in an ambush so completely sprung that some accounts claim men on that field never even noticed an earthquake striking the region in the middle of the fighting. How do you hide 25,000 men and set an entire army on fire without a single Roman scout noticing? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how. To understand how this ambush became possible, you need to understand the impossible thing Hannibal had just survived to get here. After his victory at the Trebia River that winter, Hannibal faced a problem that had nothing to do with Rome. His army included nearly 17,000 Gallic warriors who had joined him for one reason: to drive Roman settlers off their land. Every week Hannibal spent sitting still was a week that promise went undelivered, and Gallic loyalty doesn't last forever on patience alone. Rome, meanwhile, answered the defeat at Trebia the way it always answered defeat: 2 new consuls, 2 fresh armies sent north to finish him before he could threaten the Italian heartland. Both roads south ran through terrain narrow enough for the 2 consular armies to meet and crush Hannibal between them, if he took either road. Both passes are watched, one of Hannibal's officers says, studying the map. Whichever road we take, they'll know before we're through it, and the second consul marches to meet the first. Then we don't take a road? Hannibal answers. There's the marsh. The Arno floods this time of year. Nobody guards water they think can't be crossed. Because it can't be. We'd lose men in there for nothing. We'd lose some men. We would not lose the army. And we'd come out behind both of them, between their armies and Rome, with no one waiting for us. It was a gamble nearly as reckless as crossing the Alps had been. 4 days and 3 nights moving through flooded, freezing darkness. Men lost to drowning and fever. Pack animals swallowed by the mud. Hannibal himself came out of the marsh, having lost the sight in one eye, and having lost something else too. Something less visible: mercy for wasted time. What he gained was worth all of it. He emerged into the rich farmland of Etruria completely behind the Roman line. 50,000 men, and not one Roman scout had seen him move. For days, Rome still believed he was trapped in the north. He was already standing in their backyard. Hannibal sent his Numidian riders out to learn the ground and the man he'd be facing. They came back with exactly what he needed. The consul, Flaminius, is at Arretium, behind us, a rider reports. The countryside ahead is fat with cattle, undefended villages, nothing worth calling a garrison. And the man? Hannibal asks. What kind of consul is he? Loud, loved by the crowds, made his name fighting Gauls? They say he hates waiting and hates worse to be made to look small in front of Rome. Good, Hannibal says. Then I won't fight him. I'll embarrass him. It was a deliberate insult, aimed like a weapon. Hannibal turned his army loose on the countryside south of Arretium, the road to Rome itself, burning field after field, village after village, daring Flaminius to come out from behind his walls and stop him. But the fires were only half of it. Hannibal made certain his Gallic soldiers understood exactly whose land they were burning toward. Flaminius had built his political career breaking Gallic tribes, passing laws that planted Roman settlers on land those tribes had lost by the sword. Every one of the 17,000 Gauls marching with Hannibal remembered a piece of that history personally. Inside Arretium, the argument that would decide everything is already happening. It would be wiser to wait for Servilius, one of Flaminius's officers says. 2 consular armies against Hannibal, not one. I can see Etruria burning from my own city wall, Flaminius answers. People I'm sworn to protect, and you want me to sit behind this gate counting the fires? I want you to fight him when the numbers favor us. Servilius is coming. Servilius is days away. Flaminius held for the moment, but Hannibal couldn't afford to wait on a Roman consul's temper indefinitely either. Servilius could appear on the horizon any day, and if the 2 consular armies combined, the numbers would turn hard against him. If we march deeper south now, we leave 2 consular armies behind us. Hannibal tells his commanders, but if we wait for them to join up, they choose the ground instead of us. I'd rather choose it myself. We don't wait for Flaminius to find his courage, we make him chase us. A man who's chasing doesn't look where he's putting his feet. So Hannibal drove his army deeper south, placing himself directly between Flaminius and Rome, and did the one thing guaranteed to provoke a proud man past the point of patience. He ignored Flaminius completely, as though the consul weren't even worth the trouble of a fight. He's moving, a scout reports. Flaminius broke camp at dawn, the whole army, coming fast down the burning trail. How close? A day, less if he holds that pace. Right ahead, Hannibal says. Scout the ground. The trap needed the right terrain to close properly, and up ahead the road was about to run Flaminius directly into it. Lake Trasimene. The road ran along the northern shore, water on one side, a steep ring of wooded hills on the other, with a narrow pass at each end. A perfect killing ground, and Hannibal built his plan around every inch of it. At the far end of the valley, blocking the only way out, he placed his best infantry, the hardened African and Iberian veterans, an anvil that would not move no matter what crashed into it. Along the slopes above the road, hidden deep in the tree line, he placed the Gauls, rank after rank, waiting to pour down into the Roman flank the moment the column was fully inside the trap. At the entrance to the valley, he stationed his cavalry, ready to swing shut behind the Roman rear the instant it filed past. Then came the details that made all of it work. No fires on the heights that night. No voices carrying down the slope. No silhouette on the skyline. If Flaminius sent even a single scout up into those hills, one glance would end everything before it began. Far past the end of the valley, out of any Roman line of sight, Hannibal lit a scattering of campfires, just enough to make it look like his army was still camped ahead, still retreating, still exactly where a beaten enemy should be. It all rested on one man's temper holding. "We camp here," Flaminius tells his officers that evening, well short of the lake. "Consul," one of his priests says, "the sacred chickens won't feed. The standard won't come free of the ground. The gods are telling us to wait. Don't march tomorrow." "The chickens aren't hungry," Flaminius answers, "so Rome should let her fields burn while we wait for them to eat? Pull the standard free or dig it out of the ground. I don't care which. We march at dawn." Roman writers would remember those omens for centuries afterward because of exactly what came next. At first light, the head of the Roman column files onto the narrow track along the lake's northern shore, where the road tightens to a thin line between the water and the hills. Ahead, far down the valley, Hannibal's decoy fires are still faintly visible, and Flaminius reads them exactly as he's meant to. The enemy is still camped at the far end, still running. He drives the column forward without sending a single scout into the heights above him. He is certain there's nothing up there to find. Then, with the column fully committed inside the valley, Hannibal gives the signal. "Let them come closer," Hannibal says, watching from the tree line. "When they're within reach, we charge. Let no one break through." For a few heartbeats, only the front of the column is even aware anything has gone wrong. Locked against Hannibal's veteran wall at the far end, while thousands of men behind them are still simply marching, unaware. Then the entire length of the hillside comes down at once. "The road's closed. They're behind us." The cavalry has already swept across the entrance and sealed it shut. Within minutes, the Roman army is no longer an army in any meaningful sense. There is no line to form, because there was never room to deploy one. There is only the narrow strip of ground each man happens to be standing on when the hillside reaches him. "Form on me, shields up, backs together." Discipline only works where an order can actually be heard, and in that valley, in that noise, almost no one could hear anything at all. The fighting was so total and so close that, according to the ancient sources, a significant earthquake struck the region during the battle, strong enough to level buildings in nearby towns. And not one man fighting on that field even felt it happen. It was never really a battle. It was an ambush that turned into a killing, and the killing ran for close to 3 hours. Pushed back against the water, thousands of men tried to escape into the lake itself. Weighed down by armor, many of them drowned. Some who managed to stay afloat and begged for mercy were cut down where they swam. Closer to the road, the Roman center pulled itself together and made a hard stand that somehow held for 2 more hours. The guard around Flaminius closing tighter and tighter as the fighting narrowed toward him personally. It didn't hold forever. Flaminius went down on the field, and the center that had been forming around him lost the one man it still had left to rally behind. After that, whatever resistance remained came apart for good. At the far end of the valley, where the column had first struck Hannibal's wall of veterans, a few thousand Romans were still alive and still fighting their way clear. They cut through and escaped into the hills. It bought them exactly 1 day. Surrounded the next morning, out of food and out of options, they surrendered to Hannibal's cavalry. Almost none of them ever saw home again. At least 15,000 Romans lay dead by the time the fighting stopped. Most of the rest became prisoners. Hannibal's own losses were light and fell heaviest on the Gauls who had charged down that slope first. No general before him, and almost none since, had ever done what he had just done. One entire army had ambushed and destroyed another entire army, complete, in a single morning. On the field afterward, prisoners were sorted into two lines, Romans on one side, Rome's Italian allies on the other. "I didn't cross the Alps to make war on you," Hannibal tells the allied line. "Go home. Tell your cities the truth. My quarrel is with Rome, not with you. No ransom." He let them go. It wasn't mercy, it was strategy. By freeing Rome's allies while keeping only the Romans, Hannibal was planting a question in every allied city across Italy, one that would matter more than any single battle still to come. Whose war is this, really? And whose side should we actually be standing on? Even now, a second Roman force was already riding hard toward Trasimene, with no idea it was already too late. The other consul, Servilius, still marching to link up with an army that no longer existed, had sent 4,000 cavalry ahead under a subordinate to reach Flaminius faster. Hannibal learned that Column was on the road before those riders had even learned they'd lost a battle. His cavalry caught them near Assisi and destroyed half of them in the first strike alone, running the rest down and forcing a surrender within a day. Servilius's main army survived intact. It was now the only field army Rome had left standing. And Servilius, shaken by how completely his cavalry had simply vanished, would not risk what remained of it in open battle. In Rome, the news landed like nothing the city had felt before. "We have fought him twice in open battle and lost 2 armies. A senator says, "We cannot afford a third. We need one man, one command, and time. I say we name a dictator." For the first time in a generation, Rome reached for its oldest emergency measure. The Senate handed the entire war to a single man, Quintus Fabius Maximus, and gave him one task that 2 consular armies had just failed, in barely 6 months, to accomplish. Simply stop Hannibal from winning outright. That single decision, made in the panic after Trasimene, would shape the next 14 years of this war more than any battle Hannibal ever fought. Fabius refused to give Hannibal the fight he wanted, and though it would cost him his reputation before it saved Rome, that refusal bought the Republic exactly what it needed most: time. Because a year later, Rome would stop listening to Fabius and gather the largest army it had ever assembled to throw at Hannibal in a single afternoon. On a field called Cannae. Watch it now.